So with that, I would like to say welcome, and I hope that you're enjoying your time, either coming to Canada and having an experience here and enjoying the university and the conference. It's a pleasure to see everybody. I really do appreciate you taking some time in your day to choose this session. And really, again, what I hope to do is just have a little bit of a conversation that will have us talking about things like teaching and learning from an administrative point of view, maybe a leadership point of view, these kinds of things. And I do have a plan, but I do tend to move off that plan wherever the conversation will lead us. But we'll see where that takes us. If at any time you have a question or you want to add something a little bit different to the conversation, by all means, please feel free. And again, we'll just see where our collective experience takes us. The whole reason why I'm here today was I was working with my graduate supervisors, Drs. McDonald and Favreau at UPEI, and we had this conversation because one of the faculty members is retiring. And this is a faculty member who has always had really strong student reviews. There was something happening there that we referred to it as the X factor, but we didn't know what it was. And people have ideas, obviously, and as to why students enjoy their courses and why they enjoy being with a professor or things like that. But really, the conversation when I was working with Drs. Favreau and McDonald, really what we talked about was how can we report that? How can we try to uncover what is going on in that particular classroom? So we had this idea to launch a study. And that's really, the result is the paper that I had posted for this conference. But the whole idea of the study was to try to search for that, qualitatively search for what is going on in this person's classroom. So one of the activities I did was, I had actually already taken the course a while ago, but I decided to go back to the course, and I just went to every class as an observer. I actually kind of went as a little bit of an assistant in many ways because I had taken the course before. The professor asked me to maybe do some activities and these kinds of things as well. So the first part was, I actually just went to the class. Now, what I didn't do was report on the findings from that class. I just went as an observer, just to get myself to a place where I'm seeing what's happening and I'm starting to re-experience, I guess, or re-engage with the phenomenon of what's happening in this person's course. So that was an interesting activity. But then through an ethics procedure and all of these things that we did, what really happened at the end was there was a series of interviews that were conducted, and then that's where the data came from. So I can talk about that a little bit as well. Before I do that though, the other thing that's important is that there was a third person who was really involved in this study, and that's Dr. Jane Preston at UPEI as well. And it was through Jane's encouragement and guidance and whatnot that's really why I'm here today, because she really helped with the abstract and getting things done and encouraging a new PhD student to get out there and try some of these things. So I do appreciate that as well. So with setting the stage with that and trying to figure out what is this X factor of one of these instructors or one of these professors, for me one of the big questions was, well, why? Why is this important? So I throw that out to the group. And these were the ones that really led the development of this session and paper. So I wanted to hear from the students. I wanted to hear their voice. It's a mistake that I make frequently, I think, which is I forget to listen to what students are saying and feeling because I'm busy. And you've got forms that need to be filled out and all these kinds of things. And a lot of times we strike our committees and we do these kinds of things, but we forget to hear from the voice of students. So for me, this investigation was important because it truly was about the students.
And many times you get your answers from the students as opposed to the teacher or professor.
Absolutely.
Because what they're doing is not contrived. And they're not reflecting on what they're doing, it's just what they're doing.
And it's real for them. It truly is their experience. It is their reality. we may not want to believe what they're experiencing, but it is theirs, right? I'm just going to cycle back for one quick slide. There's one last thing I wanted to say. Do you know sometimes when you have a PowerPoint presentation, and I do this a lot, but that bit at the top is just like the introduction to what I'm going to talk about here. I decided for this workshop to take those bullets out, or those titles out, and I've replaced every slide with one of the comments that was made during the interviews with either the students or myself or the professor. So everything that is here has been cut out in the transcripts that were given. So this was the feedback that people were giving from their experience in this. And I thought that was a really interesting one here. Because again, we were searching for that X factor of that professor, and here's somebody saying, really, I don't know if I would have taken this course if it wasn't him who taught it. To me, that's a very powerful statement. We just wanted to be able, like, what is it? Because we felt that these things they're hard to articulate, they're hard to quantify and study.
Yeah, because they're personal leadership
Yeah.
resources, which
Yeah.
is personal.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well, I get a chance to challenge the perception of the student.
What was that?
Perception of the student.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. We wanted to hear from them.
But after hearing from him or her,
Yeah.
was it challenged to explain that perception?
Yeah.
Did you push them?
Yeah.
When you were asking them those questions?
What ended up happening was when we conducted the interviews, they were semi-structured. So the students and because I ended up interviewing 3 of the students, and I can get into it in a little bit, and the professor. And what we did was semi-structured interviews. So they received the questions in advance, and then they could think about them. And then when we got together to have the discussion, they had the freedom to add more to it. So it was quite interesting because and I hope I don't kind of double up later on here, but I made sure that when the students identified who wanted to participate in this, we were able to choose 3 very different students who were there for 3 very different reasons. And that gave some very interesting feedback because one of the students, he had some struggles with what was happening. He was not comfortable with some of these things that were happening in the room. So we were able to report on that as well, as that, here are some considerations. So it wasn't all celebratory, I guess. Right? We learned a lot of interesting things too, where there was one of the students in his particular world, he really struggled with what was happening in the room. Yeah.
I don't know whether.
Some features as to why I think a study like this could be important for administrators. And I'm taking this from a Canadian perspective. I'd love to hear if you're seeing it in your home as well. But there are definitely less secondary school graduates in Atlantic Canada. So for example, the Maritime Provinces Higher Education Commission between 2008 and 2018 is reporting a 14% decline in secondary school graduates for those years. For the institution that I work in, that represents about 600 students. So for those of you that are quantitatively orientated, you can see where that would go on the balance sheet. So change needs to happen. So we're seeing that there are less secondary school graduates. The other piece that we're seeing is there is definitely an increased level of internationalization in our programs. And that is really exciting. And we love to see the growth of our institution or in Atlantic Canada or wherever in an international presence. And again, the world is getting smaller. But as an administrator, one of the things I see is that here's an opportunity for some faculty development. There's some training opportunities that could be available here. Because if the communication is not there, if the supports and understanding and all those pieces are not there, then students will struggle. Because there's a disconnect. That connection is not being made. So I think there's an opportunity there. The other piece that's really interesting to see is we're seeing an increase of career changers, degree finishers, and individualized course sections in an institution. That's what some people are coming to the school wanting. I don't want your degree, I don't want your diploma, I just need some pieces of it. because it's what I need today to help me for tomorrow. I'll come back later, or I'll go to another institution or whatever. We're seeing an increase in that. I was saying a little bit earlier, at our institution, one of our largest applicant pools now are students with some level of post-secondary education. And that was a first for us. It was last year, and it started to tip a little bit the year before that. Prior to that, in the 40-year history of our institution, it was not there. But that changes how we need to communicate and connect with our students. It means that administration needs to be able to respond to that through faculty development, through how we structure our programs, all these kinds of things. So again, as an administrator, I think it's important to hear our students' voice and professors' voice in regards to the connections they're making in their classes and what's happening in those areas. And then, of course, what that relates to is just a changing post-secondary student demographic for us. I don't know if it's the change in your world as well, but we're definitely seeing it. Does anyone have any comments on that? How the study went. So we had to put some parameters around the study. Of course, it went through university ethics and all of those pieces. But what we ended up doing was some post-course interviews with 3 students and their professor, and it was all done separately. So they didn't interact as a group. They worked with me individually. And the focus of the questions was on their lived experiences in the class. We wanted to uncover things like, did you feel there was a time, and I have the questions in the back of the paper which is posted there, but did you feel there was a time the professor was not connecting with you? Can you describe that a little bit? Do you feel there was a time that you weren't connecting with the content? Can you describe that a little bit? Can you describe some of the memorable moments from that class? Like really, I was asking, what do you remember? Because I was trying to uncover, do they remember content, or do they remember an experience? And I think that's a powerful kind of thing to try to explore a little bit. The professor's questions were similar, but they were a little bit different. We realized that we couldn't ask the professor the exact same questions as the students. But I did want to hear from the professor, was there a time when you felt you weren't connecting with the students? Was there a time that you felt the class wasn't engaged? So we were trying to uncover some of those things. What did the professor see as a highlight of the course? What does he remember of the experience? So we tried to go down that road, and then what I did was I used a qualitative coding piece of software. So we had the interviews transcribed, we had the interviews loaded into this software, and then what I was able to do was do some thematic analysis and coding of the actual statements that people were giving. So as I was reading the transcripts and going along with the structures of how we could code here using a form of thematic analysis, I was bringing sentences and statements over into an area where they were combined. And then what ended up happening was a series of themes that emerged. And we were able to give those themes some titles. And then once I went with those themes, I was able to choose the ones that were the most popular. So these were the 7 main ones that emerged. There was, I believe it was 10 or 11 in total, but some only had a few little comments, so I didn't use them. Because quantitatively, these were the ones with the highest number of comments. So those were the ones we decided to say, no, that's okay, I completely understand, thanks, nice to meet you.
I explained earlier that I had to leave early,
Yeah.
so I'm not definitely sorry.
So you can see the ones that emerged as the most popular for the students that were interviewed and the professor. So what were the strengths? What were the teaching strategies used? How was the learning environment managed? What does this idea of personal ownership for learning look like? What were the memorable moments you had? How did you connect with the professor, and what did engagement look like? And then within that, there's a whole series of statements. And in moving further with the paper, then what we did was, by describing those more and looking at the opportunities, we were able to uncover, maybe there's some opportunities for faculty development here. Maybe there's opportunities for people to have more conversation. Maybe there's an opportunity to redistribute finances differently. And again, the whole idea was just to uncover what do these kinds of things mean from both the student's voice and the professor's voice. So that was really the paper in a nutshell, and hopefully you can pick up that where I was trying to go was, as an administrator, is there a strong voice coming out of this? Is there some richness of qualitative data coming out of this that I could use as an administrator, or help me to even just reflect upon my own practice as an administrator? So the next time a student comes in my office or a professor comes in my office, I might just think about something a little bit differently.